Hello, I'm Dr. Lisa Belisle, and you are listening to or watching Radio Maine. Today, I have with me in the studio artist Brian Emerson. Thanks for joining me today.
Good morning, Lisa.
Brian, you're a New Englander by background.
That's correct, yep.
Not technically a Mainer, I guess.
Yeah, I'm sure that's true. If you're not born here.
Well, I wasn't born here either, so I can't claim it, even though I've lived here all my life.
Yep.
So where are you from?
Born in New Hampshire. The only one in my family actually born in New Hampshire. Everybody else is Massachusetts. So we grew up in the formative years in North Shore, Massachusetts, Beverly, Danvers, kind of near Salem. And then moved up to Concord, New Hampshire, getting back into the woods again. I think that was my dad's doing, kind of get back out of the city a little bit and up to the country. And that's where I did all my high school days. And then, so that puts me at 93. I graduated, did a little traveling after, Seattle area. Mid-90s, you got to go to Seattle. But I got back, that's right when I moved to Maine.
And I hear you moved to Maine because you were chasing somebody to Maine.
Yes,
Not in a weird way, but
there was
like...
a little pre-story there.
Yeah, exactly.
There was definitely a cute girl, Colleen Barter, that was living in Mid-Coast, Maine. So I moved up to Rockland, Maine, to be a little closer to Colleen, and worked at Hoboken Gardens in Camden, and fell in love with Maine right away. I mean, it's a special place. There's a lot of coastline. There's no coastline quite like Maine.
Yeah, New Hampshire has a little bit of coastline.
Yeah, it's great. I loved it. I was there all the time.
Yeah, exactly. But it's a little bit smaller.
Yeah.
Massachusetts has a very different and distinct coastline.
Yeah, Cape Cod is, we go there every summer too, and love Cape Cod too. But
it's gorgeous.
Yeah.
But Maine is Maine.
It's Maine.
So
you have to experience it.
Yes, that's true. And so you're here, and somehow you've connected with, maybe unwittingly perhaps, this art family, the Barter family.
The Barter family.
Yeah, tell me about that.
All right, it was definitely a very awesome, lucky move up here. I've always been interested in art and done art through my whole life. My brother is an artist, and you always do what your brother does. Older brothers, at least that's what I did. So I had art in my life, and through high school, entered competitions and won grants and stuff that I never used, But moving back to Maine and seeing, say, Philip Barter and Matt Barter, Philip making this career out of it, doing it for fun and for a life, I was like, definitely I want that, So it was nice to work hand in hand with Phil and other members of the family. I remember probably right away, I think we might have lived with Phil and Priscilla for the first few months of our marriage. They have a big house that rambles on. We lived above the studio, and he had a project building, I forget who L.O. Bean or somebody commissioned a bunch of outdoor furniture pieces to be painted up and built. So me and Reuben Barter were building them, and Matt and Dad were painting them. So I got to really experience that. It was great. And
of course, Matt has like an entire sort of magical village of people and things that he has created, like little physical structures. When he came in, he brought one with him.
I'm sure his lobsterman or something like that.
Yeah, exactly. But it's like this whole world that he's created.
His sketchbooks are just almost scary. Like this, you can just see into his mind of this, madman artist that, and he pulls it off. His stuff is really awesome. He's out there doing his own thing, and I love it.
So when you are a painter, obviously, but were you ever drawn to do something more like that?
With sculptural? That's a good question. I will say I am more of a 2D painter, but I did silversmithing for a bit when I moved to Maine. So I'd say later 90s, we moved up with Phil and Priscilla, and I was working at a jewelry store. Colleen, my wife, and I both were, and they apprenticed me to do silversmithing. I actually went to Haystack School for it, and that was an awesome experience too. So there is that. I still have a jewelry bench set up at the Barter compound up north, and I'm actually wearing one of Phil's pieces from the 80s here. It's Halley's Comet, which he doesn't do much with the jewelry stuff, but I'm going out if I'm wearing that thing right there. But yeah, it's a rare piece. But so there's the jewelry. But as far as sculptural stuff goes, I have never done big installation pieces or anything like that.
Yeah, not yet.
Not yet. Except with Phil, maybe I've helped him on some stuff and install it at post office or schools back in the day and that kind of thing. But yeah, not yet.
Not yet.
That's the beauty of art.
Life is hopefully long.
Mm-hmm. I'm a young artist here.
Yeah, exactly. So why painting?
I guess I just like to adventure. I'm always out. We're out camping. Last weekend we're up on Donnell Pond near Schoodic mountain near MDI, Bar Harbor. And what are you supposed to do? You're looking at all this beauty. So I love to, at the time, draw it. I always have my art bag. So there's watercolors or gouache in there for plein air painting or whatever. And then I just bring it back to the canvas or panels or whatever back at the studio. And I don't know, there's a certain feeling when you're done with a painting, signing your name, like, just feels good. That you put your own interpretation on what you saw out there on canvas.
So you brought with you today a couple of pieces, and one of them is Phippsburg.
Yes.
Talk to me about that connection.
All right, yeah. I've got some friends that I grew up with in New Hampshire that have this camp right on, it's called Barnacles. It's right in this little cove. And the cove, it's got that little golf course there. I'm just forgetting the cove's name there, but it has Burnt Coat Island is what you're looking at on their dock out there. So we'll meet them there often and just sit on the dock all day long. It's a great little cove there. You see boils of fish. It's a real deep cove, so you see all kinds of stuff out there. I'll take the paddle boards out. And so this is a painting I brought, I'm looking at over here, but that is the sunrise on Burnt Coat with a little boat, the neighbor's boat hanging out there.
So when I look at this, I'm struck by kind of the brilliance of the yellow. And I know this is it's a really inelegant way to describe art, but it's really striking as it comes out into the blues of the morning. But it's also, there's a spareness about it that is interesting to me, because I think a lot of people, when they look at a scene and they're like, oh, here's an entire cove full of all these things, and you're like, no, I'm just going to put this dock, this boat, this sunrise.
That's correct. You did a good job.
I'm a pretty elementary art describer here at this point, but
all the words right out of my mouth.
But it's very striking to me.
Thank you very much. I think, and yeah, so that is the style of art that I'm drawn to. I know Phil Barter had a bunch of books in his life. He's an extensive art library and library in general, but all the artists he seems to have books on were that early mid-century, like 20th century art that was putting away the pastel colors and really going the bold images and compositions and harsh colors and bold lines. I love that. Just kind of strip away, work from reality, get the framework there, but then just kind of strip it down, like you were saying, and maybe turn up the volume a little bit on the colors, and it's not realistic, but you get the image and hopefully the artist's perspective and how I want to see it.
Well, and I think one of the reasons that I like it is it's quiet, but it's also dramatic. And I do get exactly what you're talking about, that, you're really you're going to push it just a little bit so that you can have that impact of that moment.
Yeah, I agree. And this one, I did a painting, this drawing is actually from several, maybe even a decade ago. And I did a smaller painting on the same kind of size, a really long, skinny one. And I came across this canvas and I'm like, this reminds me of the same. So I repainted it again, which I'll do sometimes, but change things up a little bit. And I brought the dock back a little bit. And on this painting in particular, I overworked the boat at first. It had too many things on it. And I came back the next day. I'm like, it was so simple the first time. Like, I like to see that point of inspiration, that you can kind of trace it back to almost that first brush stroke. And I lost it on the boat. So I just smeared it out and just did it again. But so it could be in relation to the rest of the painting. It was too detailed. So I like that vagueness. It lets the person, the viewer, kind of fill it in a little bit on their own too,
So tell me about this other piece, which is actually quite different.
It is. I agree.
It's from a camping trip.
It is, yep. And again, this goes back a couple years, but that same camping trip I think I was just mentioning on Donnell Pond, which is just a gorgeous area, Maine. If you hike up over this, you're surrounded by Schoodic Mountain, Black Mountain. I don't want to give away all the details because it's a gem. I don't want everybody. No, I'm just kidding. But if you hike up over Schoodic, you're looking right at MDI, all the mountains on the ocean. It's so unique anyway. How often you get mountains out in the middle of the ocean. But the neighbor actually caught these fish that in the pond we're in. There's obviously you have trout over here in the river coming in, and then it's deep enough that they have salmon there too. So he caught a landlocked salmon and a trout and brought him over, and we just fried him up and did a painting as well.
the reason I like this and the reason I like art just generally is that you're telling this story and I'm looking at this and I'm thinking of my dad. And I'm thinking about the times that I used to go fishing with my dad.
That's right.
And that kind of that in the moment experience. And I wonder how often you are sharing a piece of art that you created, that you're coming at it from your perspective, and somebody else comes along and says, well, let me tell you what I think this means.
I love that about art, music, all that creative stuff, that like I've listened to a song all my life. And then it's almost weird to hear like the artist explain it. I'm like, that's not, you interpret it your way and you apply it to your life. So like you just did with that painting, and that is good. I agree with that you make it your own and you adopt it, and that's totally beautiful. And I think that's a great thing to do with art.
And sometimes when I've talked to people who create art, they'll say, well, I purposefully am vague because I actually don't want to impose my story on, this piece, because I want other people to interpret it that way. But I kind of like it both ways. I like, well, unless I'm a little disappointed by the story, in which case I'm like, all right, well, thanks for telling me. I feel bad now, but anyway.
Never met you.
But I usually don't take it that far, but okay. But I do like the fact that, it can be both. It can be both what you are bringing, and then if there is a narrative to it, to what you're bringing, and then you're kind of being met by the person who's sharing that experience now with the art itself. Which I think is kind of the magic of it, right? Yeah,
I agree that I love to, everybody can look at the same thing and just see it a different way. And to some of my favorite artists, I love seeing how they, you can paint something kind of boring like a loaf of bread, but if you do it with your own style, unique style, I could be like, whoa, I love that composition, how the backlight comes in. Or you could paint a beautiful sunset and just a little bit drab or boring, I'll just pass by it. So it's all just like the perspective. I love that perspective and storytelling and narrative that a painting gives. But I do agree that I like to tell my story, but I do like to leave a little bit there that somebody could adopt it as their own or see it a little differently. Perfect,
Tell me about your favorite artists. And I'm assuming you've had probably lots of different favorite artists at different times of your life.
Yeah, I mean, Maine has a lot of great artists. I think the ones that influenced me, again, going back to the books I read out of Phil's library, were like that, you got Dove, and he loves Marsden Hartley and John Marin and Georgia O'Keeffe, and these people that were just bold colors and stuff like that. And I locked that stuff's all locked away up here, and hopefully influencing and like I was taught, like Picasso said, you rip off an artist if you need to. Like if you look, I love the way he did that sky. You can adopt stuff and make it your own and melt it in and stuff like that. So those are a lot of the influences I had that time period.
So as you've continued to evolve as an artist, I mean, you've had formal education, and then you've kind of continued to learn alongside the Barters, and you've brought in other artists that you've studied. What types of things are you drawing upon for inspiration now?
It's definitely Maine. I mean, it's you live on the coast of Maine, and I've been venturing inland towards my home state of New Hampshire too, to the mountains more, because I'm always on the coast. The family's all on the coast, mid-coast, southern coast, where we live in South Portland, and up by MDI. And then we went to Campobello Island camping. That was pre-COVID, so a couple of years ago. And that whole rugged coast is just amazing, like just so inspirational. So if you were to go on my webpage or Instagram, I'm sure that you'll find that Maine, New England, not that we don't travel, we did a lot of traveling before our kids, and now my daughter's 17, our daughter is 17. So we have more in our future. But for now, just traveling around New England is just so inspiring. And so I do like to work from that framework, and then of landscapes and seascapes and some still lifes and stuff. And I live in South Portland, so Portland buildings and the harbor right there, you got the fishing wharf and stuff is loaded.
So as you were describing your family to me before we started talking on the air, you were very complimentary of them, and also they're not artists, from my understanding.
Well,
I mean, I guess you said your brother.
Yeah, my brother. Yep, my brother is an active artist, and he was always my inspiration from my formative years. I think we won an art contest on the radio or something like that. I was like in kindergarten. That actually was pretty cool because my stuff got on TV. And I was like, wow, that's awesome. And so I always follow your big brother, what he does. And so luckily he was into cool stuff like art. And so I kept up with it. High school, we had a really uniquely great art department there with 2 awesome teachers that kept me motivated. And then marrying into an art family, and that certainly doesn't hurt, seeing how the inner workings, how you can make this thing actually your life. And it was so exciting. So that was a real moment. But I don't. My daughter, Honey, is 17, and she's actually an awesome artist and writer. So there's a lot of talent in the family.
All right. But were your parents artists?
No, you know what? My parents were not artists, but they were supportive. No matter what you chose, they had your back. So I did have that going for me, that they 110% go for it, you know.
Yeah, and I think that's, I mean, I think about that a lot. Like, you know, my parents, for example, my dad's a doctor and I'm a doctor. Great, that worked out well, right? Yeah. But then, you know, my mom and dad who regularly, hi mom and dad, regularly will watch this, you know, podcast, which, or video cast, and they reflect back with me and they'll say, oh, well, this week you talked with, I don't know, Jane Damon, and I, you know, learned this from that. And for either one of them, it really wasn't within their conceptualization of a life, but they're still like, okay, sure, go ahead, jump in. And that means so much to have somebody, even if they don't understand what you're doing, provide the space for you to explore it.
Yeah, you got to have your team for sure. I agree with that 100%, and hopefully I can provide that for our daughter too.
Yeah. Now, as a 17-year-old, she's probably thinking about, you know, kind of life beyond where she's been so far.
Yep, starting to open those eyes.
Just starting to open those eyes.
Yeah, COVID kind of shut a lot of stuff down, I think, you know, but
yeah, that's so true. But do you have a sense that, you know, will she pursue art? Will she pursue writing?
I think writing is her little passion. Mm-hmm. You know, buck the old art system a little bit, but she'll just pull out some watercolors. I'm like, I'm so amazed, you know, jealous a little bit. But she was just up at UMF, the college in Farmington, for a writer's workshop and things like that. So her stuff's exciting.
So what is that going to mean to you and Colleen? I mean, because I have a child that just finished college, and she was the last of the 6 children that have, you know, are in our household between the 2 of us. Yeah, that final tuition payment was quite exciting to send off.
For sure.
But it does, you know, change your life in a pretty significant way. You know, it changes the way that you interact with the kids. It changes the way you interact with the significant person in your life. And for me, it has just changed the way that I kind of exist creatively. So do you have a sense for what that might look like for you?
We'll get back together in 5 years. And
okay.
I'll have a better viewpoint.
We're not there yet.
Yeah, we're not there yet. She's just going into senior year, and you know, we're super excited. I mean, she's just another adult in our house now. She's not like the little kid you have to keep bossing around. So, but it'll be interesting. I'm actually very excited. We both are, to see where this goes, like any parent. But we'll be there.
Yeah.
I promise,
okay.
to support.
So you're right. So I guess that's true. Yeah. No, peeling back the years here, I'm thinking about that final year of high school, and that actually was a big time. I wasn't necessarily thinking about the other side. I was at that time like, oh my gosh, this is the last one of all of the things that we are going to do. Yeah. And so I think every moment of that year was okay, let's take a picture. Okay, last day of school. Yeah. Okay. Of course, my daughter wouldn't let me take a picture.
Yeah, we're in the same boat.
Yeah, all right. Well, I feel better now because
you didn't fail.
That's right. No,
or I'm not sure.
Yeah. Okay. Either way, I guess we're good. It doesn't really matter at this point anyway. We still love our daughters, whether you let us take a picture of them or not. But anyway,
the group shot, the 4 of us.
That's right. So I think, you know, for me though, that last year of high school was sort of a leave taking, and it was sort of a really significant sense that what I had, you know, I had to encapsulate it somehow, because it was never going to exist that way again.
Yep. And life moves on, right?
Yeah. And it just, you know, I don't think I'd ever had that large sense of how big this thing was that was now in my rearview mirror.
Yeah.
And I don't want to scare you.
No, you did.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Is there like a deer in headlights look over
sorry.
here?
Yeah.
No, it's all exciting right now. You know, she's got her schedule and she's pumped on her senior year coming up. So we're just going with that one for now. But there is, I'm sure, that whole empty nest syndrome, or, you know, you have the house to yourself and stuff. But I think we're going to be all right.
Okay.
I'm excited for the next page to turn, and in our lives, in her life, and
Well, I guess that's exactly what I was trying to get to, was really like, and I guess you can't answer that. So you have to come back next year.
Yeah, seriously.
We'll have a conversation
every year.
when you, yes, we could definitely do that.
I'll hold you to it.
That's right. I guess that's what I was really trying to get to, because, I've spoken with other people. I spoke with artist Laura Mrazek about kind of the stages of creativity in one's life related to where one is as a parent, for example, because so much of what we do when we kind of usher humans along with us in the world, we call them raising our children, but I'm not really sure that that's entirely true. I think it's
we're big kids ourselves.
Exactly. We're kind of coexisting, and we're trying to mostly stay out of trouble, I think, as we go. Right, exactly. I do think there is a lot of creativity that kind of goes into that co-generation of a life.
Yeah.
And so then when you take a step back and you're like, okay, here I am, different phase. Where does my creativity go now? And how does that manifest? And for me, it's been really interesting and surprising. But maybe for you, there have been other things that have shifted kind of the way that creativity has flowed in your life.
I hear what you're saying. And I do think that as an artist, or anything you do, I'll focus on art, that evolution and changing is good. Maybe switch back to something, but trying new things for sure is a must. You look at artist Modrian, like his stuff. He's a Dutch painter, painted fields and windmills, but then by the end he's painting this like primary colors of black lines and whatever Broadway boogie there and stuff. Just like it's like, wow, how did that happen? And so I'm not going to change that much, I'm sure, maybe, but as an artist, I'm looking forward to like keep pushing it and, getting your own voice and stuff like that. I learned under the wing of Philip Barter, so I'm heavily influenced in a good way. I have all this little, I wrote down little secrets as he's talking, how to mix my cerulean blues, my raw umbers to make a cool, whatever it is, and I'm like, I got all those notes and I got this information, but, just finding as an artist your own voice out there. I think I'm again excited about the future.
Yeah. Well, and, I was mentioning Jane Damon before, and even in the short amount of time I've known her, I mean, her work has just changed dramatically in such interesting ways. Yeah. The color and the way she does trees and, the way she introduces rivers into her pieces. And you're absolutely right. You look at it and you're like, oh, wow, I never would have thought of doing it that way. That's so interesting.
Yeah. Good to have a bunch of artists out there doing it. And I saw one of the birch trees and it's just so big, basic. It's a nice big painting, but just like, it's awesome. Just perfect. Don't do anything else to it. Like she left it alone at that right moment. That's the thing. Sometimes I'll get to like just poking at a painting. I'm like, I should have stopped an hour ago. Like there's a point where it's like, you're not making it better. Maybe just put it away for a little bit, work on something else, but a lot of her stuff, maybe I would have poked at it a little more, but I'm like, I love that she left it alone. That's another thing hard to do for an artist sometimes, to like, some paintings take a long time and some paintings just take one setting, but just know when to stop. And I think she knows, she's a good person, knows when to stop.
Yeah, I do. I have heard that more than once, that to know when something is finished is actually really tricky.
Yeah.
Which I guess is true, right? If you get to the end of if you're writing a report, you're like on page 10, the end, all done.
Right. Just
right?
Like,
yeah,
where the stopwatch ends.
And that is all. But but if you're doing art, it's like, well, maybe that over there could be a little bit more orange, or I can add a brushstroke there.
Right. And half the time I'm just making it a little bit muddier. I'm like, So again, I was. I might do a couple paintings at the same time. I've had, especially if it's watercolors or if I'm out doing stuff, I'll have like 10 going. And I'll just keep like, all right, let that dry and move another one. And then by the end, maybe I have 2 that I like. The rest hit the campfire. But you just gotta, I was definitely taught by the Barters, don't be afraid. Like, go for it. What's the worst that can happen? You mess it up. Oh, well, you just, learn from that. Don't do that again. Or maybe like this whole thing's messed up, but where this color touched that color, look at that amazing new tertiary color you just made, and you, all right, just learn from that one. But fear is definitely the enemy, as far as art goes. So you're bound to make a bunch of messes, but then if you can get a few awesome ones out of it, that's learning.
And would you say that a lot of artists are working on multiple pieces all at the same time?
The ones I know, actually, I think that is true. I know some that are amazing artists. I respect them all the way, but they're definitely focused on one painting, and it might take months or maybe even a year to paint, I've heard. Whereas the people I tend to associate with as an artist are a little bit more, wild with a brush and are doing multiple paintings at one time. I remember reading about Paul Klee. he always had a bunch going. And if you look at from that year, I can almost see the same colors in those paintings, and it's probably because he had them all splayed out and was just walking around the room, painting multiple paintings at the same time. So I think it's a good. It works for me anyway.
Well, I'm wondering, you've recently become affiliated with the Portland Art Gallery, so that's kind of a new experience for
very
you.
Excited, very happy.
Yeah, so I'm interested to hear kind of where did you come to the place where you're like, I think this is a good idea now in my life.
All right, that's a good question. I'm a bit of I don't know, bad self-promoter. I've shown at galleries for years. I like to think an artist all my life. It's kind of funny to say that, but definitely for 25 years, I've been like really focusing on painting and building my skills. And I've been with a gallery up in MDI for a number of years. I've shown at other galleries around Maine, done pop-up shows with Matt and Phil sometimes. But I've always been a little bit hesitant. Like, I'm not sure why it's personality, or if I'm like, do I feel like I'm ready to like step out of the shadows? And again, I'll bring my daughter into this one again. We were walking around town the day I came to Portland Art Gallery and submitted to be with you guys. She had to do read a poem on stage, and she was super nervous about it. And I'm like, all right, you know what? I'll go face my fears, and I'll walk into Portland Art Gallery because I knew I was going to be doing this right here, and I'll do it if you do that. So anyway, I wanted to be with Portland Art Gallery anyway. It's my favorite gallery in town. I think it's a great space. So I just needed that push to step it up, and I think I'm totally ready now. Whereas maybe 5 years ago, maybe my art was ready, but I wasn't ready or something. So I feel like it's taken a long time to feel confident enough to, present myself.
So why?
Yeah. It's got to be a personality thing, but I am glad I did, mid 40s, late 40s, like it's now or never, what are you going to do? Just always paint in your studio and tuck it away on your shelf. So I guess maybe with art and music and writing and anything creative like that, you're kind of putting yourself out there. So there's always going to be a critic. I don't know if I mind critics. I don't know if it's that as much as just making that step. Like I've seen it happen. I've seen other people do it. Why aren't I doing it? So it's a new time. I'm doing it.
Well, I mean, I honestly ask this not because I'm questioning the fact of it. I mean, I've written multiple novels. Have I published any of them? Absolutely not. They are sitting somewhere, and they have not seen the light of day.
I'm going to interview you next time.
Exactly. So I know my own why, but I'm kind of fascinated to hear, the whys of others.
Yeah.
Why now? Why not? What's the fear? And is it the light of day thing? Is it that somebody might? You said it's not that you fear criticism.
Yeah, I don't think I mind getting. I like a critique. Like, my wife's not afraid to critique, just like Priscilla's not afraid to critique Phil, and so I think they can be very useful. And I at least listen 30%, and sometimes I don't change something, so I'm not afraid of a critique. Or a critiquer. So I think it's maybe my own self-critique. I'm gonna go with that. Like, do I have the body of work to really like get this thing up off the ground? Do I have whatever it is? And I'm like, yeah, I do. What am I waiting for? It's just like, I don't think it's not laziness, because I'm always hard at work. So it's just something up here that I've talking to friends my age too, in whatever profession they're in, I can see them all making that changeover. Like, I'm in charge now. This is my new business or whatever. So I'm like, it's time to step it up.
Okay.
As an artist,
So maybe it's like somehow a different level of commitment.
Yeah. I hope I didn't come off cocky or something like that. No, it's just it's a commitment thing. So it's like believing in myself or something like that, and committing to something. Yeah. And I'm super excited to be in the Portland Art Gallery that's got some of the best artists from Maine and around that I can't believe I'll be sharing wall space with. So it's gonna be a great year coming up. And
well, pretty soon we won't need any other artists except for people who have an association with the Barter family.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
We'll just keep expanding and expanding. Yeah. So when you talk about sort of trying to achieve a certain feeling in your composition, is there an overriding feeling that is, or is it every situation is slightly different?
I probably just personality. I probably do inject my own personality into a scene, but I do try to let the scene talk, whatever it is, if it's a seascape or a landscape or still life. But there's a lot of sketching going on just for composition. I think I love composition. Like I learned that every good painting comes from a good sketch. So I don't just, I definitely have a notebook full of sketches. There might be 10 sketches for a drawing because like the one I did this week, finished yesterday, just my flowers out in front of my house, but it had part of my porch in there, my mailbox. And partway through, I'm just like, no, I got to get rid of that. It was just distracting, just changed it a little bit. So I'm not afraid to change something mid-painting, of course, let it talk a little bit. But for the most part, I have the idea kind of nailed down on a sketch and maybe some little like workups on some quick painting on a panel or something first or watercolor. But then it's off to the canvas or panel and try to make it, I like it when I can tell a painting who the artist is before I look at the signature. And I feel like a lot of good artists, you know who it is, So I'd like to get to that point where like people just know it's an Emerson, and by the feel of it or something like that,
So that's the feeling you're talking about. It's just the sense that it is an Emerson.
Yeah.
For example. I like that. That's really interesting. But it's interesting to talk to you because I think you're absolutely right. It takes some sort of level of confidence to kind of commit to something like joining a new gallery, for example. So it takes that level of confidence, and there's always that push-pull, though, right? Mm-hmm. There's always that internal, like, okay, here I am, but wait. Yeah. Here I am at the end of the dock. I don't want to jump off.
Do I have everything, all my ducks in a row? Yeah. Do it so and Portland Art Gallery has been awesome for the whole getting on board process. They're great people, Kevin and Emma and all the gang there. So it's been a great a month now that I've been kind of working with them.
Well, and I think that's really important that on the other side you have people who are like, okay, jump, we're good, we're here, we got you. That's great.
So true.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And also, I think it's comforting to talk to people, to talk to artists and and have them say, of course I feel, some level of trepidation. Shaken, Of course this is going to require, I have to get to this place. Mm. And I think you bring up a great point that sometimes our children actually, that you have a 17-year-old.
Yeah, they're looking at you.
Exactly. And you're like, okay, I guess I better go now. Right. Yeah.
I still feel 17. Yeah. Right. Yeah. I'm an adult. I got to do this. Yeah.
No. And actually, isn't that also true? Right. Like when I was growing up, I was looking at my parents. I'm like, well, they know everything. At some point, I'm going to get to that place that I will know everything too.
Right.
And I got to the place that I was like, oh, okay, when does this happen?
Yeah.
When do I actually know everything? Right. But I think it's great to actually, because I think artists in particular, they are physically, here is something in the world that represents something that's really important to me.
Yeah.
And I think that's such a manifestation of kind of whatever it is.
Yeah.
Confidence, some level of overcoming fear, something like that. I think it's important for us all to be reminded that that's what this is ultimately for many people.
Yeah. That's a good point. That it is a little piece of you out there that can be loved or picked on or whatever somebody wants to do. But yeah, I agree that putting a painting or any piece of art form out there is putting you out there, and it's rewarding at the end of the day, and I wouldn't have it any other way.
Well, that is great to hear. Mm-hmm. Well, it's really been a pleasure to talk with you today.
Yeah, you too, Lisa.
And I hope that we will get a chance to see you at some of the upcoming Portland Art Gallery openings.
I'll be there.
Good, very good. For those of you who have been watching or listening, I've been speaking with artist Brian Emerson, who creates wonderful works you're really going to enjoy. So I encourage you to go to the Portland Art Gallery and see them in person. Maybe come to one of the openings and you can meet not only Brian, but also all the other artists he's mentioned, including his people who are related to him now by marriage, the Barters, Philip and Matt. And you're a delightful individual. So just meeting Brian Emerson in person will be, I think, highly worthwhile. So thank you for coming in and talking with me today.
Great. I love the studio is awesome. Your property is amazing. So I'm going to definitely wander around the island a little bit while I'm here.
Okay. So if anybody sees him out there wandering around, don't be scared. He's not intimidating in any way whatsoever. I'm Dr. Lisa Belisle, and you have been listening to or watching Radio Maine. Thank you for joining us. And thank you, Brian.
Yes, you bet.